Hi guys, I'm Laura Vitale, and on this episode of Laura in the Kitchen, we are getting cozy with it, and we are making the ultimate chicken noodle soup. I think you'll be really pleasantly surprised at how easy it is, but how this method just ensures the chickeniest chicken soup you'll ever have. I made a recipe on this like 10 years ago, and it was definitely time to not just really update it, but to remind you of how phenomenal chicken soup is, and I'm thrilled to share it with you. I posted a reels about it, and so many of you loved it, and it gave you such cozy vibes, and I love that, because if chicken noodle soup does not give you a cozy vibe, then you don't have a cozy heart, is all I'm saying. The first thing you want to do is get your oven preheated to 425, which I know you're already thinking, what? Trust me, one of the things that I've always done to my chicken soup, is I roast my chicken. When you roast your chicken before adding it to your stock mixture, right? You're doing three things. A, you're deepening that really beautiful color of your broth, A. B, you're adding such deep flavor to your soup that you don't achieve otherwise by just putting the bird into the water. And three, you're rendering a lot of the fat so that your soup doesn't end up with a big, thick, greasy film of fat on top of the broth. We don't want that. That's kind of gross. I don't do that. So by doing this, it does render out a lot of fat, and it just makes it so much better. You could do this with chicken pieces, like drumsticks and thighs, and bone-in, skin-on breast if you wanted to. But I always suggest just go ahead and roast it first, because the flavor is just unbeatable. And wait till you see how easy it is. I just do it in a cast iron skillet because the grease also seasons my pan, so 2 for 1. I take a bird about between 4 and 5 pounds. I don't do anything special to it. You'll see. You take your whole chicken, make sure it's nice and clean, trimmed, whatever. I take an onion, just cut it in half, and I'm gonna shove it under there, trying carefully not to touch the chicken itself because I need to use my salt. Dun, dun, dun. Achieved. Achieved. Add that in there. That just kind of adds a little flavor. It keeps the bird nice and plump. A tiny bit of olive oil on top just to help it bronze. Heavy on the S&P. Wait till you see what this looks like when it comes out. Like I said, heavy on the S&P. That looks fantastic. I'm not adding any herbs. I'm not adding anything to it. This just goes in a hot oven for like an hour or until it's really beautifully golden brown. When it's there, I'll show you what it looks like. In the meantime, we are gonna prep veg. So let me pop this in and we prep veg. Okay, so now that the chicken's in the oven and it's roasting, we're gonna just work on building our flavor for the broth. So simple and easy. You need a couple of onions. I take out the very outer paper skins, but I leave the skins on because it provides really beautiful color. So I just cut them in half, add them to your big stock pot. Remember not to fill your stock pot with too much water, because when you add your chicken, you don't want anything to overflow. So I do 2 onions. I do parsnips. I typically do 2 parsnips, but these were pretty small. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do 4. I'm leaving the skins on these. They're organic. They're scrubbed clean. They are good to go. I love parsnips. If you don't, you can always leave them out. But honestly, I just think that they add such lovely flavor to this that I do miss it when it's not in there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add it in along with some carote. Go ahead and just give them everything a rough chop, because you're gonna actually take all of this out after it's cooked for a long time, because once your soup has cooked for a really long time, these just kind of turn to mush. But then when we strain them out and we pull apart the chicken and all that jazz, we're gonna go ahead and dice up some fresh carrots and fresh celery, and we'll add that to the mixture later. Not right now. Right now you just need to add your celery, which, by the way, celery, so underrated. I love celery. I love eating it in salads. I love eating it, obviously I love putting it in any soup base. Parsley. Get that all in there. A whole head of garlic. Typically, I would like a bigger one, but what is this? What may you be? What size may this be? It ain't a Laura size head of garlic, but it's all I could find in my grocery store. It's like slim pickings in there these days, but hey, it is what it is. So we have all of that in there. And the next really important thing is plenty of seasoning, because you don't want a bland stock. You want a very flavorful stock. And I know what else you're thinking. Where are all the other herbs? I don't really add any other herbs to this, and the reason why I don't do that is because it limits the flavor profile. I want a really beautiful chicken soup. I don't want it to be clouded by a lot of sage, a lot of thyme, and things like that. So I don't add it in there. You can if you want to, but you will be shocked at the flavor you get from this when you add your roasted chicken and you let everything cook for a long time. It tastes like the way chicken noodle soup should taste. That's all I'm saying. Lots of salt and pepper, and a nice healthy pinch of salt. Remember, this is a good sized stock pot. And before anyone asks, this is by Stobe. I don't know the size of it. I think it's like an 8-quart. It's big. Anyway, this is gonna hang here until my chicken is done, and then we add it to this, and it's gonna be phenomenal. All right, my chicken was in the oven a little less than an hour. If I had more time, I would let it go just a little bit longer, but it's fine. I'm gonna go ahead and add this right to the stock. I want you to see something. I want you to see how I'm going to also add a bit more water, and as this cooks, it will submerge into the broth, so do not worry. But look at all the fat that it rendered. You see it? Look at all the fat that it rendered. That would have been in my stock, which I do not want. If you take your chicken and you place it right in to your water and do it that way without roasting it first, I suggest you do this part the night before. And once you take everything out, take that broth and pop it into the fridge, and the fat will solidify on top. So it'll be really easy for you to skim it right off. But for now, I'm gonna put this on. I'm gonna let it cook for a couple of hours. It's gonna need some time for that flavor to really develop. And like I said, I'm gonna add a bit more water, and as this cooks down, I will turn my chicken over to make sure it's all submerged in the water. And I'm just gonna let it go for a couple of hours. All right, so chicken soup simmered for about 2 hours. I took the chicken out. I also fished out all of the veggies, and at this point you can see they've lost all of their vibrant color, but they have given out a lot of their really wonderful juices. But you see that? That's all good. Look at the color of that broth. Can you see it in the bowl? Look at the color of that broth, and that is in part from the veggies and the onions, but also from roasting the chicken, which, like I said, it's an extra step, but really you're not doing anything to it, just throwing it into the oven and letting the oven do the work, right? So this is the broth. It's now coming back up to a simmer because I turned it off to let this cool a little bit. The chicken, I mean, it is just falling apart. I don't want the skin, so I am going to get rid of the skin. And all I'm going to do is take the meat off the bone, literally like that. Look at this. It shreds like butter because it's super tender, cooked for a really long time. I don't need to use the whole chicken for this because it'll be like really heavy on the chicken, but who doesn't like to have some chicken on hand for other things? I do, but I am going to use all the dark meat because it's got a lot of really good flavor. So all I'm going to do at this point is shred some of this chicken. I also went ahead and diced up some fresh carrots. I've got some rainbow carrots, some parsnips, carrots, and celery. I went ahead and diced them up because I'm going to add the fresh chopped veggies to the broth. That way I still have my veggies in my chicken noodle soup, but they're not like completely mush. They've got a lot of beautiful texture and color still. You don't have to, but I do think that it makes things a little bit better. So once that comes up to a gentle boil, I'm gonna add the veggies back in, I'm gonna add the chicken back in, and I'm gonna let everything simmer together for like 20 minutes. Okay, it's been about 20 minutes that I added the chicken and the veggies in, and I have seasoned it with a bit more salt and pepper. This broth is so, absolutely so dynamite. It's incredible. Now, you can do one of a few things, okay? Say you are not going to eat all of this chicken soup tonight. You can boil your egg noodles separately and then just ladle them in the bottom of the bowl and then add your chicken broth on top and you're good to go. And then that way you don't have pasta swelling in the broth the entire time it sits there. You can add a splash of cream and some herbs and some biscuits, and then you have chicken and biscuits like that. Easy peasy, no problem. Or you can just eat it as is without adding anything to it. You can add some potatoes to it if you want to keep it like Whole30 friendly or paleo friendly. I'm going to go ahead and do it old school and add my egg noodles to this because I like cooking my egg noodles right in the broth because it absorbs all of that flavor. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You know, egg noodles kind of like swell up, so you really don't need a ton. I probably add in this entire amount, I probably add like 3 or 4 ounces because look, we've got a lot of chicken in there, right? We want a lot of chicken, a lot of veggies, and I don't want this to be all noodles. I want this to be chicken soup with a little noodle. That's kind of how I like it. So added that in there. The way I love to top this soup, or pretty much any soup these days, is a combination of chives, parsley, and dill. It is so good on lentil soup. It's great on any kind of bean soup. It's phenomenal on chicken noodle soup. It's really dynamite, and I feel like it gives you such beautiful freshness and vibrancy with little to absolutely no effort. So all I'm going to do is just finely chop my fresh chives, fresh parsley, fresh dill, all from the garden. Which they're still thriving and kicking, which makes me very happy. So I'm just gonna go ahead and finally chop everything up. The egg noodles cook in like 5 minutes. So I am pretty much ready to ladle and eat in just a couple minutes. Noodles are cooked, turning it off. And the broth is absolutely to die for. Now, I do want to reiterate that yes, this took a long time to cook because you were really working on building the depth of those flavors. But I want you to remember the difference between time consuming and difficult. This is a bit time consuming, sure. It's a perfect thing to make on a chilly weekend day, on a beautiful Saturday, but it's not difficult. You're not actually doing much of the work at all. You're kind of letting the time do most of the work, which is kind of phenomenal. You could be doing lots of other things in that time. Great reward. Time consuming, yes. Not something you make on a Tuesday night after work? Absolutely not. However, if you cook your noodles separately, you can freeze the chicken and the broth and all that goodness and then pull it out on a busy Tuesday night when you want a bowl of something comforting, and there you have it. You add your noodles and it's like incredible. This is fantastic. I'm not adding any more seasoning, and I also want you to look at the color of the broth. It is not clear at all. It's really beautiful, deep in color. Those tender vegetables that are kind of like tender crisp because they're not mushy, because remember, we didn't cook them for a long time. And now you're gonna just top it with a handful of the chives and the parsley and the dill, and it together with the broth and all of the aromatics in the broth becomes something so harmonious and delicious, and it just kind of wakes it up a tiny little bit. And I mean, it is to die for. It really is. I love rainbow carrots. My grocery store, in the little organic section, recently started carrying rainbow carrots, and look at that. I'm here for it. I'm like all about it. They're beautiful. Let's give this a whirl. I would also squeeze a bit of lemon on this, but I'm not telling you to because I know some of you will think I'm crazy. I want nothing else right now but this. This is heavenly. Go to Laura in the Kitchen for the reason, laurainthekitchen.com for the written recipe. Although you can make this with your eyes shut. It is delicious. You will love it. Perfect cozy food. We love cozy food. It's cozy season. I'm here for it. I know you're here for it. I hope that you enjoy spending time with me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.